11 o'clock.
We are live. I'm just going to let in students now. Good morning, students. Welcome to the medicine seminar. We have Robert, our consultant, who will be taking any questions on medicine. And we have David from the University of Dundee, who will also be presenting on the same. So please feel free to drop in any questions in the chat box, or we will take any questions at the end of the session. Thank you. Over to you, Robert.
Um, Good morning, everybody. I'm going to give you a brief, maybe 20-minute presentation on applying to study medicine at a UK university. If at any time you can't hear me, if I'm not speaking loudly enough, do please flag it up and let me know, because I want to be as clear as possible. So don't be shy. Do by all means uh, stick your hand up. But I'll continue without further ado. So yes, thank you for coming. My name's Robert Money. I work for SIUK. We help international students into UK universities, including for courses on medicine, which, as I'm sure most of you will know by now, is one of the most competitive courses. There are many. It's a subject for which many are called but few are chosen. So that's one reason why we see fit to deliver this presentation on the process of applying for medicine. There are many students who come to us from many parts of the world expressing an interest in applying for medicine. And in recognition of that interest, we're trying to demystify it, to explain it, and give you a step-by-step explanation, which can leave you in no uncertain terms about what you need to do and when with regards to applying for medicine. So let's begin by defining our terms. What is a medicine degree? A medicine degree is it's a 5 or 6 year undergraduate course. So if you finished your A levels or IB, you'll go on to university for not the standard 3 years, but for 5 or 6 undergraduate years before getting your degree in medicine. And the first 3 years of that will probably be the preclinical stage, which is akin to much of what you'd study in biomedical science. But the subsequent parts, whether 2 or 3 years, is the clinical part where you're actually taught to do things and taught how to practice medicine. If you are already a graduate, you might have got your degree years ago, and then you decide you want to be a doctor. You can do the 4 year graduate entry medicine degree, where it's 1 year preclinical and 3 years clinical. As you can imagine, that's five or 6 years crammed into 4 years. That'd be a very, very intense course. But we do have people who get onto it. Now, a lot of people study, particularly from abroad, look into studying medicine in the UK without really having much of an idea of where they would want to practice. But in case you were thinking otherwise, a UK medicine degree is designed to prepare you for work in the National Health Service. The National Health Service is it's state run. It's a state monolith which provides healthcare free at the point of delivery, from the cradle to the grave. It's one of the world's largest employers, and if you're studying medicine at UK university, you are being prepared for work in the NHS. It makes sense when applying for medicine with the interview, with the personal statement, to express an interest in the NHS, a desire to work there, and you want to show that you've researched its managerial structure, its working methods, its current strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and so on and so forth. So it's worth investing time looking into the NHS, because it's not just medicine you're getting into, but a particular medical organization, and a vast one, which has been around for 70 years, 70 years plus, and is very, very important in the UK. The other thing to consider is the fee. Fees for foreign students are exceptionally high. For example, at Oxford, if you're going to read medicine at Oxford and you're not a UK student, it will cost you £43,670 per year. And that, over several years, is a considerable sum of money. So, of course, if you're a UK student, then you're just paying 9,000 a year. But even then, given that it's 5 or 6 years, that's a considerable debt you're going to be accruing, which may take quite a lot of time to pay off. So do count the cost. Do consider the financial implications. Even though the money is good in medicine, no one should really be going into it for the money. And even though it can be well paid in the intermediate and later stages of a career, the cost of studying will be considerable. So do bear that in mind. Yes, 3 years preclinical, 3 years practical training. I've covered that. So that's what a medicine degree is. That's how long it takes. That's what it's designed to lead to, the organization, the NHS. This is how it's structured, 3 years preclinical and then subsequent clinical. And that's how much it costs. So given the chronology, the finance, the structure, bear that in mind before deciding whether you want to proceed with an application for medicine. Good, let us proceed. So let's imagine that you've got the money. You've thought, yes, I can do 6 years of my life doing this. I can afford the fees. I'm prepared to spend 6 years at university. I do want to work for the NHS. I do want to study medicine in the UK. Good. The next thing to consider is, will you get in? What are the entry requirements? As I said, medicine is one of the most competitive courses in the UK. It's been said it's hard to get into Oxford or Cambridge, but I think it's considerably harder to get into any medicine degree. And I'm not just talking about medicine at Oxford or Cambridge, I'm talking about any medical school in the land. Because it's been said, what do you call the worst graduate of the lowliest medical school in the UK? And the answer is a doctor. Doesn't matter if you're not the best in your medical cohort. Doesn't matter if the medical school you're going to is not the most prestigious. You're still a doctor, and once you're a doctor, I don't think it matters very much which university you attended. There are, when it comes to most subjects, say business or management, there's high rank, there's the high, middle, and low. But with medicine, it's different. There aren't really any low medical schools. To get into any medical school in the UK is a considerable achievement. And as a prospective doctor, you shouldn't be thinking, well, I want to go to Oxford or Imperial, but I wouldn't really want to trade down below that. No, the attitude should be, you should be happy to get into any medical school that will have you, because to get into any medicine course is a great achievement and will set you on the path to becoming a doctor. Typical A-level requirement, A-star AA. For example, Keele University, to get into medicine at Keele, they want A-star AA or AAA plus an extended project qualification with grade A. And your A-level choices should include chemistry and biology, which, as we know, are difficult subjects. If you're doing the International Baccalaureate, you'll want a score of 39 or higher. So that is the ballpark. That is the level you need to be in contention for a medicine degree. And at this point, it's worth pointing out that just because you've got these grades doesn't mean you're anywhere near being assured a place, because lots and lots of people who have these grades and do apply for medicine don't get in. They fall at other hurdles. They might not do so well at the aptitude tests, or the interview might not go so well, of which more later. But okay, if you've got or are on course to achieve those sorts of A levels or that sort of IB score, then you are someone who can seriously consider applying for medicine. Okay, moving on. Okay, but let's imagine that you've counted the cost, you can afford the fees, you're going to go to university for 6 years, you want to work for the NHS, and you're getting A star, AA at A level. So far, so good. Now, because there are so few places and so many applicants with good grades, the universities want to sift, as it were, sheep from goats. They want to, and they want to sift between people who are academically good, as opposed to people who are not just academically good, but also temperamentally and intellectually suited to medicine. Because just because you're good at science at school doesn't mean you're necessarily suited to medicine. What they want to see is people who are not just good scientists, but also appropriate for medicine. You need to have the right personality, the right character, the right sort of mental aptitude. Well, that's why it's called the clinical aptitude test, UCAT. They want to see whether it's going to be a round peg and a round hole. Most medical schools require a good score on an aptitude test. For example, UCAT, that's the most common one, University Clinical Aptitude Test. Whereas some schools insist on the Graduate Medical School Admissions Test, GAMSAT. Until recently, we had to think about BMAT, the Biomedical Admissions Test, but that's being discontinued from this year. So I think we need to be thinking about UCAT and GAMSAT. And you asked me, well, okay, what do they involve? And I can say, well, I'll talk about that, but don't be alarmed. They have websites, and you can look at past papers and practice. And even though these tests are designed to test raw aptitude and raw ability, like an IQ test, it still is very important to practice them, because it's by practice that even though they're meant to test ability and not just good, being well taught and putting in effort, practice makes perfect. The limits of your ability may hold you back in some ways, but the more familiar you can get with these tests, the better. And you can practice past papers. You can look at the website. But at this stage, let me give you a brief snapshot of UCAT, which is a 2-hour computer-based test in test centres in the UK and worldwide. So if you're based abroad, you can sit it where you in your home country. If you're applying for entry in 2025, that is, if you're looking to apply sometime before October the 15th this year, October coming up, October 2024, with a view to starting university in September 2025, then you'll be sitting UCAT sometime from now, really, because the current cycle, the 2024 cycle, involves booking from 18th of June. That was 2 days ago. That was Tuesday. You'll sit it from the 8th of July. And the last test day is 26th of September. So if you want to start a medicine degree in September 2025, you will be booking UCAT now. You'll be sitting it sometime in the next 3 months. And that will be part of your application to be submitted on UCAS by October the 15th, 2024, with an interview we hope to follow, with a view to an offer to begin your medicine degree in September or October 2025. So if you're interested in reading medicine in 2025, now is the time to be thinking about UCAT, not just thinking about it, but booking it and sitting it. As I said, 2-hour test, computer-based, and it consists of 5 separately timed subtests in multiple choice format. So that sounds nice, multiple choice, but of course it does find you out. And these subtests are verbal reasoning, decision-making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment. And you want a score of at least 2,300. It varies from year to year. But on the whole, you want a score of at least, because I mean, different year, different candidates, different scores. It goes sometimes up, sometimes down. But you want a score of at least 2,300. If you're going for a university that wants not UCAT but GAMSAT, Graduate Medical School Admissions Test, then this is going to be for graduate entry medicine. If you're going for that, you need to have completed an undergraduate degree, though there are some exceptions. Again, like UCAT, it's a computer-based test in test venues and remote proctoring. It has 3 sections. Section 1, Reasoning in Humanities and Social Sciences, multiple choice, 100 minutes. Section 2, Written Communication, again, not multiple choice, but essays, 2 essays, 65 minutes. And section 3, Reasoning in Biological and Physical Sciences, multiple choice, 150 minutes. So a pretty hefty test with not only multiple choice, but also essays, and not only humanities, but also sciences. So that really is a test. And the more you can practice this test, the better. Registrations opened in May and they close on the 4th of July. So if you're going for graduate entry medicine and the university you're applying for is asking for GAMSAT, then you haven't actually got very much time. The 4th of July, I believe, is 2 weeks today. So you've got a fortnight to register for GAMSAT if you're going for a GAMSAT university. So time is of the essence. Time is of the essence. Good. So to recapitulate, we've decided we can do the 6 years. We can afford the 6 years. We're going to work in the NHS. We're getting A-star AA with A-level, IB of 39. And we know what we're about with regards to the admissions test, whether UCAT or GAMSAT. Good. Okay. Well, if all those angles are covered, it's looking very promising. But that's not all. You also need to have practical experience. Now, don't panic. By practical experience, I do not mean you need to have done a great super duper internship with a surgeon that was secured by family contacts. You do not need that, useful though it is. You don't need to have done, a month-long shadowing of a doctor. It's very useful. You can get that, but it's not essential. What you need is something which shows a willingness to get your hands dirty and help people in dirty work, collaborative work, caring work. It could be volunteering in an old people's home. They always want volunteers. You don't need contacts. You don't need family connections to get that. You could be volunteering in an old people's home, or some other caring, charitable, altruistic activity. Again, these show that you're not just a good scientist, but you're also a sort of helpful, collaborative person who's prepared to get stuck in, roll your sleeves up, work with people, good bedside manner, helping the vulnerable, and doing the sort of work that most people, certainly most teenagers, frankly, would not want to do. You need to have, the nurturing and compassionate character and manner of a potential doctor. That's what this work experience is designed to show. And if you can get work experience in a hospital or anything like that, absolutely do it. It's all good. But I mean, hospital experience is very useful. But everyone knows that in many cases, it's some people have family connections and can get these things. Other people who would be great doctors don't have those family connections and therefore can't get quite the same prestigious work experience. And because of that, medical schools who want a level playing field don't insist on this sort of prestigious work experience, useful though it is. But where there's a will, there's a way. And if you can do plenty of practical activity of a caring nature, that will cover this angle. Good. So let's imagine that you're on course for great A levels or IB. You've done your work experience. You've aced the aptitude test. It's all looking good. But the next hurdle to consider is the medical school interview. Most medicals are now, when we think of an interview, we think of a panel of interviewers, or maybe even a one-on-one interviewer, like the sort of typical Oxbridge interview, where you go in and are interviewed by an academic. But most medical schools, well, they have that, but they also have multiple mini interviews. One little interview, then another little interview, then another little interview, testing all sorts of aptitudes and characteristics. Um, for example, it could be, you go into a room and it's a 10-minute interview, and you've got to sit with your back to someone who's, sit back to back, and they've got a picture in front of them, and they've got to describe the picture. And from their description, which you can't see the picture, they describe the picture, and you write down, and that's or some exercise, and then you go to another exercise like that, another exercise, and it's sort of lots of little interviews. That could be the formula. And once you've submitted your application by the 15th of October, with a personal statement, with the obviously the personal statement is very important. That needs to talk all about your scientific highlights, how what you've studied in science inclines you to medicine, talk about how your work experience inculcated compassion and empathy, show that you've researched the NHS and know about what's happening there. Talk about why you want to be a doctor, what inspired you to become a doctor, what sort of doctor you think you might want to be, and so on and so forth, showing enthusiasm and aptitude for medicine. You've got your personal statement, you've submitted the application on UCAS, you've done the aptitude test. Then sometime, maybe in early November, or maybe as late as March, you may be called to interview. And if you are, that's an encouraging sign. You've not been rejected without interview. If you are being called for interview, that means you are in contention. They're taking you seriously as a candidate. And then there's everything to play for the interview. Again, it could be a panel interview, a panel of interviewers asking you questions over a long period, the more conventional type of interview format, or it could be MMIs. And then if you do, and as I say, the what questions might you get asked at this interview? It could be, why do you want to be a doctor? Why do you want to come to this medical school? What did you get out of your work experience? How do you respond to problems? What are the big issues of healthcare today? How will you manage your work-life balance? These sorts of things. And there's only so much you can do to prepare for these. And if you give pre-rehearsed answers, it might come across as a bit contrived. They do want to see that you can think quickly and agilely on the spot in an intelligent and articulate way, much as you would have to, in fact, as a GP, facing the general public, who come and ask you all sorts of questions about the health problems. Medicine is often a customer-facing, public-facing role, so an ability to respond to quick questioning and curveball questioning is a vital attribute in medicine. And of course, surgeons need to think quickly, doctors need to think quickly. So success under this sort of interview interrogation, if you like, is one index of potential ability as a medic. Okay, so we've talked about the fees, we've talked about the structure of the course, we've talked about the aptitude tests, the personal statement, the work experience, and the interview. I hope that makes it reasonably clear for you what steps you need to take and when, and how the application and selection process works. I hope you're more comfortable now and more clear about what's going to happen. Of course, SIUK is at hand. We have a medicine service to help you navigate this process. We can advise you on your choice of medical school. We can edit your supporting documents, including the personal statements. We can offer you interview practice with a practicing surgeon, no less, a practicing surgeon who sits on the admissions panel of a London medical school. we can fill in the application form on UCAS and track your application. And in that way, we can help you get in to medicine. We can't guarantee anything, of course. We'd be very foolish if we said we could guarantee anything, but we are here to help. As I hope I have helped with this talk. Perhaps I'll stop there. I hope I haven't rambled on for too long, but I'll pass you over now to Shagan, who can take you to the next stage. Over to you, Shagan.
Thank you, Robert. I will pass it down to David, who's from the University of Dundee. Over to you, David.
Okay. I shall share my screen. Oh, Robert, you need to stop sharing your screen.
Oh, yes. Sorry. How do I, oh dear.
So it's exactly at the place where it said share screen. So there will be the same button to stop presenting as well.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, now
Sorry.
I'll try again. Okay. Is that in presenter mode?
Yes, it looks
I can
perfect.
see it. I can see it.
Great. Okay, so thanks very much for asking me to come along to this. So my name's David Russell. So I have a few roles here. I used to run the medical program at the University of Dundee. I'm also the international lead for the Centre for Medical Education, and I also oversee business development and partnerships. We will do a lot of international work in medical education. So today I'm going to talk around a little bit, just very briefly, about the admissions process, because Robert's covered most of it, what we offer at Dundee, and some kind of practical tips around your application for medicine. Although it is very, very competitive, there is a little bit of strategy to be employed in thinking about your medical school application. And I'll give you some pointers on that one. So if you haven't been to Dundee, and if you're not aware of where Dundee is, then you can see it on the map here. So in the northeast of the UK, and it is today, actually, it's known as the sunniest city in Scotland. So we get a lot of sun here in terms of not so much rain as they get on the west coast. Very nice city. This is the Victoria and Albert Museum, which you may have heard of, the famous museum in London. We actually have one in Dundee as well. A really beautiful building. So it's a nice place to be a student. So Dundee, even though it's a relatively small medical school in terms of student numbers, is really kind of at the forefront of medical development. And a lot of things which you will have heard of were invented in Dundee. So in terms of medicine, laparoscopic surgery, so keyhole surgery was invented in Dundee. And also you've heard already about MMIs. So MMIs are based on OSCEs, and OSCEs are the clinical examinations that pretty much all medical schools now use, and they were also invented in Dundee at the Centre for Medical Education. We are very interested in innovation, and one of the unique things which I hope I'll show you is that the medical school at Dundee is based within a very large hospital, so everything we do has a strong link to the clinical world. We had some visitors here last week, and one of the things they said is very difficult to know where the medical school stops and the hospital begins, because everything is embedded. So our students get a lot of experience in developing. So a couple of things, as I mentioned, keyhole surgery was invented here. The picture of SNAP 40 here was invented by one of our medical students. And this is, a fancy AI program that creates clinical information based on a wearable device. And he's not a medical student anymore because he sold this to an American healthcare company for $400 million and is now a CEO of a big med tech company. We're also very big on data. So we have one of the biggest clinical data sets in the world. So we have a live link to all of the NHS data, and we pull it through into an anonymized, trusted research environment where we do lots of things around AI, image analysis. We have a huge biobank, we do genomic analysis, and we use that to support research, clinical trials, and also population dynamics. So we do a lot of work looking at the spread of disease through different populations, with a particular focus on diabetes, which Dundee is another world leader in. So we have access to all this data. And again, so our medical students get involved in this, and we have parts of the program, which I'll mention shortly, where you can get involved and actually develop your interests in different areas, whether it's health data, surgery, lots of different options. Health data is one of the big pushes of the future. The GMC are about to redesign outcomes for graduates and include the importance of data. We need medical graduates who are able to go on and do this kind of work, because it really is making a big difference as we move into precision medicine. And a good example of this, so we are currently in the late stages of development of a robotic colonoscopy, where you'll have seen robotic surgery, so you can perform colonoscopies from a distant site. And actually, it uses an AI program, which as it proceeds through the colon, it actually scans and looks for early signs of disease, and it actually classes them. So it picks up what they reckon the lesion is and report that back. So this is the kind of thing that we're currently developing, and our students are actually involved in this project as well. We do a lot of immersive simulations, so we want to develop your skills in a safe environment. So we have a very large simulation centre called the Dundee Institute for Healthcare Simulation. And one of the things we have is an immersive room, so we can put you in any environment that we want. And so for here, we're upskilling paramedics. We can put them at the side of a road in an RTA, and just the sights and the sounds that come through, really affect your decision making. And this is interactive, so we can put you in a high dependency unit or an accident emergency department. And as it would be in the real world, as new information becomes available, so the blood tests have come back, you can actually tap on the wall, and the X-rays, blood tests, results, etc., will come up, and so you can actually go through a larger scale simulation. And we're creating a network of these across Scotland as we start to move towards, training people using exactly the same scenarios and facilities to standardise the experience. Again, we have a very large surgical training department, and again, we're now a robotic training centre for the UK. And we use a lot of VR, artificial intelligence programs to train people. We run programs for medical students right up to advanced master classes for people that have been practicing for many, many years. So if you do come to Dundee to study medicine, you will actually develop your skills in this area and get access to real state-of-the-art equipment. So in terms of the programs that we offer, I know most people here will be interested in the medical degree that we offer, and that's what I'll focus on, but we do also have postgraduate programs. And all of our programs are integrated within real-life clinical services. So they have a very, very big clinical focus. So the list, as you would expect from a medical school, include things like embryology, public health, health data science, motion analysis, orthopedic technology, etc., neurosciences, and medical education. If you're interested in any of the postgraduate programs, then we have lots of information on our web pages. And if you just have a Google search for the University of Dundee, it will bring them up. So to focus on the medical school, so in the middle of this, the picture on the left, you can see the medical school, but we are within a major teaching hospital. And because of the geographic location, we serve a large proportion of the Scottish population, including, so even though the population of Dundee is around 150,000 people, we probably serve nearly around 500,000 people who live in rural parts of Scotland. So we provide a large number of services that you wouldn't normally see in a hospital if it was just serving the city of Dundee. So we still think about hospital size in terms of beds. So we have 827 beds, all major specialties. We don't do transplant surgery. That tends to be done at Aberdeen. And cardiothoracic surgery is largely done in Glasgow because, again, the way Scotland is set up, it's easy to transfer patients. But we do offer everything. We are a major trauma centre, so we have a helipad that you can see. We have acute psychiatric units. So you get really good experience of all of the specialties here in Dundee. Now, Robert spoke about your personal statement. Now, believe me, as somebody who used to read every personal statement, your personal statement really is a key part of, grabbing the attention of the people, whether it's they're going to ask you about it in your interview, as we do at Dundee, or whether they actually score it as part of your application. And really, it's a difficult thing to get right because, you really have to kind of demonstrate you've got the basic skills that we can spend 5 years developing as you progress through your medical program. And so we want evidence of all these things, and it's really difficult to do in basically one side of A4. One mistake that a lot of people make is that if you are lucky enough to have lots of clinical experience, you've shadowed lots of people, a lot of people use word count to tell us about that. That's not what we want to see. If you are in that position, pick one, maybe two, but what's the most important thing is for you to demonstrate what you learned from that experience and how it helped you to make sure that medicine is what you want to do, or how it helped you develop as a person. We want to see evidence of self-learning, personal development. Resilience is very important, and personal growth. So don't leave your personal statement to the last minute. Put a lot of effort into it because it is the way that you can sell yourself. Now, as Robert mentioned, interviews form a large part of the selection process. You can see how selection operates. Contact the medical schools. We are generally very friendly people and happy to help, answer any questions that people send us. And things around UCAT. Is there a cutoff score? What's the competition for places? How many applicants do they get for each place? All of that information is available on the web, or the admissions team will help you. In terms of Dundee, so what we do is we look at your predicted or actual grades, and that can include your university degree, and we put a 60% emphasis on that. We put 40% on your UCAT score, and we combine those to give you an academic score, and we use that to rank and decide who we will invite to interview. So there was a push to increase numbers again recently. So we currently have 220 places each year. And for those 220 places, we will interview about 1,500 people. So we put a lot of emphasis on the interview to select people with the skills that we look for at Dundee. And we do use MMIs, and they're based on the OSCE. So people who will perform well in MMIs will go on and perform well in OSCEs. So why do we use MMIs? So it produces lots of data about you. We know from psychometric analysis that it's a very reliable test. We use Combach alphas, which have a reliability score of over 0.7, will tell you that your test is very reliable at differentiating between good and not so good candidates. And it always comes back with a high score. It's based on the OSCE, so we're picking people who will actually go on and demonstrate that they can perform well in that kind of assessment. And from the candidate's perspective, the feedback, generally is that people prefer MMIs because if you probably haven't, been through enough interviews to know that feeling when you're in a panel interview and it starts to go downhill. Sometimes there's no coming back, but in an MMI, once that station's gone, you have to move on and put that behind you. There's lots and lots of information online about MMIs, and you can watch, there's lots of videos that are available on MMIs. Have a look at them, practice with your friends. It's easy to get some scenarios, time them. But one thing that people don't do, which I think is very, very important, and actually it's another feature of why we use MMIs, practice your reset between stations. So if you're going from having a difficult conversation with somebody, say you have to talk to somebody about their behavior, and you're going now into the next station is about the ethics of organ transplant. You have to be able to put that difficult conversation behind you and focus on the next one. So get some different scenarios and actually just practice that, taking a deep breath and moving on. So it's kind of simulating what happens in the clinical environment. If you're a doctor in A&E and you're dealing with somebody, stabilizing them for half an hour, you don't have time to sit and have a coffee and relax in between. You're straight away into the next patient. So it's that reset, having to change your mindset. So that's an important thing to practice. And again, these are the kind of things we're looking for in medical students. Again, we don't want you to perform as if you've been practicing medicine for 20 years. Do you have the basic skills of communication? Are you empathetic? Moral reasoning. You don't have any strange ideas about moral values. Can you demonstrate teamwork, critical thinking, knowledge? Knowledge, certainly at Dundee, our MMIs are not a knowledge-based exam. You should be aware of the NHS, what the NHS stands for. You should have an understanding of the most current kind of medical um, themes that are taking place. The BBC Health channel is a good source to look at. Just keep up to date. But we don't expect you to go into actually in-depth knowledge, but have an idea. And it's about you. So there's no right or wrong answers. It's, can you hold a conversation? Can, put your point of view across and say why that's your point of view? And then if we give you a little bit more information, can you take that on board, change your point of view, or stick to your original argument? Very, very important in your interview. One of the things that's very important in medicine, somebody needs to go on mute. Thank you. One thing that's very important in medicine, we don't want people who take risks. So if you don't understand the question, if you don't understand anything about the situation, ask. You're not going to be marked down on it. It's a good thing, because somebody who will go ahead and perform a procedure and they're not quite sure, or there's something that they don't know about, is a risk, and we don't want to see that. So don't worry about asking questions. So in terms of offers, so most medical schools will make roughly double the number of offers that they have places for. If you're a good candidate, it's likely you will have multiple offers. If you are an international student, then you also have the extra advantage of that you're probably not just applying for the UK, you might be applying for other countries as well. So particularly for international students, there's quite a lot of competition to get them for medical school. So we make a lot of offers. We look at people by different fees. So actually our international applicants have actually a better chance of securing a place, although the numbers of places for international students is quite small. The actual ratio of offers to places and acceptances is better for that group than it is for instance, our home Scottish students. So although it's tough and there is a lot of competition, don't give up. We also have waiting lists. Now, all medical schools will have waiting lists. They don't go to clearing, but we do have waiting lists. And certainly at Dundee, if you aren't made an offer in the initial process, then we will ask you if you want to be put on the wait list. And then if there are places, then we would come back and make additional offers later on. So we offer very early clinical exposure. So at Dundee, you would meet your first patient in week 1 of first year. So we have an integrated medical curriculum, which I'll talk about briefly. We are very, very advanced in our use of simulation. We have really advanced simulation facilities, which as medical students, you will spend a lot of time in. We give you a lot of choice. So 25% of the curriculum is self-directed, and we do that through things called student-selected components. And we also allow you to pick where you study your clinical placements. We do a lot of interprofessional learning, so we teach you skills alongside nurses and other allied health professionals using our simulation and also in the clinical environment. The most important thing, we produce very good doctors. The GMC produce a lot of data around how prepared people felt for to work as a doctor from their medical school, and Dundee is also one of the top. Scotland's a great place to live and relatively safe. Cost of living is lower, and Dundee was actually has been nominated a few times as the most affordable city to be a student. So as I said, we have a spiral integrated curriculum. So we build your knowledge and skills as you move through the curriculum, and we teach you knowledge. We embed that knowledge using clinical exposure from first year, and then we build it. And then in the years 4 and 5, it's purely clinical. So there's no classes anymore, and you will then, really develop your skills and learn how to work as a doctor. And so we think of you as a student doctor rather than a medical student. So you are aware and you're taught of your role within a team, and you do have a role within the team. So when you go into the clinical environment, you do have a role to play, but we make sure you understand the limits of that role, and that increases as you develop through the 5-year program. So we kind of have split the program into 2 phases. So the first phase is we call systems in practice, and that really covers years 1 to 3. And so we have an initial block that kind of settles everybody to make sure everybody's got the basic knowledge around the sciences. And then you start working your way through the system. So a system, for instance, is respiratory or cardiovascular, and they last for roughly 6 to 8 weeks. And in the system, so for instance, in cardiovascular, you will learn about obviously the cardiovascular system in lectures. You'll learn about cardiovascular disease. You will learn about the drugs to treat cardiovascular disease. You will, in our simulation center, learn how to carry out cardiovascular examinations. And in the clinical environment, you will focus on patients with cardiovascular disease. So we embed it into a kind of a self-contained block, and then you will work your way through the systems. And the SSCs are the student selected components. And then we also have blocks called CLASP. Now, CLASP stands for Clinical Application of Scientific Principles. And that's where we just have a pause. So obviously, respiratory, cardiovascular, GI are very interrelated. So we look at them as a bigger system. So if you have a respiratory symptom, what could it mean in terms of cardiovascular disease? What could it mean from GI, etc.? So it kind of gets you to think about not just them in discrete blocks, but actually to start thinking about the bigger picture. And in years 1, 2, and 3, it kind of follows the same pattern. So in the mornings, you will have lectures and tutorials. In the afternoons, you will have clinical skills training, you'll have communication skills training. You will spend an afternoon in general practice each week, and you will also spend another afternoon in another clinical environment, whether that is in a hospital here, or visiting patients at home, or seeing patients in some other clinical environment. So lots of clinical exposure through your first 3 years. And again, so this is one of our lecture theatres. Really, the only time you will be with the whole class is during lectures, and then you're split up into smaller groups for the other activities. And this is another one of our lectures. This is set up for team-based learning, where you work in smaller groups. And so again, you'll spend your mornings in that. I mentioned the Dundee Institute for Healthcare Simulation. So we have a really advanced facility, and in the bottom left, you can see one of our simulated hospital wards. We have a high dependency unit. We also still use cadavers for anatomy at Dundee, and we do full body dissections. So as a medical student, you will dissect a human body. We have a different kind of cadaver at Dundee, and the hand on the left is the kind of cadavers and the right hand side is the cadavers that are traditionally used. So they're much more advanced and lifelike. So really great for learning anatomy. So in our simulation center, that's where we also run our OSCE exams. And in your 5th year, we run the ward simulation exercise. So we bring in real patients, simulated patients, mannequins, nursing staff, and you will be given the opportunity to run a ward as a junior doctor. And it's about prioritization, decision-making, and really helps build your confidence, because a few months after you do it, all being well, you will be a junior doctor running a ward in a hospital. And again, we have a surgical equivalent, as I mentioned before, and you will spend some time in here developing your surgical skills. And then, a lot of our graduates come back as they develop their career as surgeons to do more advanced programs. After year 3, if you have a particular interest, and about half of the medical students do this, you can step out for a year and you can do a bachelor's degree in 1 year. Graduates tend not to do it because they already have an undergraduate degree. But if you want to become a clinical academic, or you want to, really enhance your attractiveness, if you want to go into specialist training, then you can do this. And we offer these different programs that are all available. And then you would come back in, join 4th year, and carry on through your medical program. And so year 4 and 5 is really purely clinical. So we initially have a transition block, we call it, that just makes sure everybody's well placed for the clinical environment, using the IT systems, lots of other things that you will be required to know, because you will become embedded in the team, and you will have a role to play. In year 4, you have your core clinical placements. So these are more directed, and you will do them in medicine, surgery, obs and gynae, child health, psychiatry, general practice, and you can also have a clinical SSC. So that's the student selected components. We also have the option of a longitudinal clerkship. So if you're interested in rural medicine, then you can spend a whole year out in a rural area of Scotland, and you come back just to sit your exams. Now, there is a new assessment called the Medical Licensing Assessment, and this is run by the GMC. So it's been developed for many years. We've been closely involved in the development of this. And because our final knowledge exam is in year 4, we are actually about to run this exam for the first time on the 25th of June. There's two universities in Scotland and a couple in England who run their exams in year 4. So we will be the first people to run this. It's a national exam. It's embedded into the final knowledge exams at medical school. It's nothing to worry about. It's no different than the assessments that you would normally do. It's just done nationally, and the GMC have introduced this. So after you finish year 4, that's your knowledge has been tested for the last time. And now in year 5, it really is about preparing you to be a practicing doctor. So we call them foundation apprenticeships because largely you work with junior doctors. So you will do shift work, you'll do weekend work, you will do medicine, surgery, acute care, general practice, 2 clinical SSCs, and you'll also have an elective. So that's where you can go anywhere in the world and you can experience healthcare in a different setting. So as long as you can find somebody to supervise you, it's safe, then you can go into it. And literally our students go all over the world to do that. And so post-graduation, so all students graduating with a UK medical degree can apply for foundation training. So it doesn't matter if you're a UK citizen or you're not a UK citizen. If you graduate with a UK medical degree, you're eligible to apply for foundation. After your FY2, your second year of that, you will move forward into specialty training. And as we've heard, job prospects are excellent. There's not many unemployed doctors. A UK medical degree and a GMC license is very attractive in terms of opening up doors for you in other countries. It's easy to work in other countries. A lot of countries recognise the GMC license, so it's a good degree to have. Salaries are good in terms of, particularly as Robert said, in mid to late stage career, the salaries are very good. But also, think about there's alternative routes in medicine. So big data, law, we have medical graduates who go into law. AI is a big one, and research. So at Dundee, we'll give you experience of all of that in terms of being able to, have the basic training that will allow you to go into these different areas. So that was my last slide. If you have any questions, then you can go through Shagun, or you can let me know. So I'm going to stop sharing screen and hopefully don't bring the whole thing to a standstill.
Thank you, David, for such a lovely presentation. We do have a few questions. But students, just to let you know, all of the recording is available on YouTube. We will be sending an email with the presentation and the link, so you can refer it anytime that you need. So now we'll take a few questions. So the first question is, this was like way long back, so probably Robert, you can answer this. What about the postgraduate entry when the applicant has a degree in nursing and has a band 5 nurse in the UK? One second.
You're on mute, Robert.
Yeah.
The implication of the question is that because it's a degree in nursing, it's somehow different. They might want to know why you're switching from nursing to medicine. If you were originally going for nursing, why do you now want to go for medicine? You've already been trained for one thing. It shows an inconsistency. Although I suppose if you had a very, very convincing reason for maybe you were a late developer as a science student and found that you were so good at the anatomical and biological side of things that you wanted to pursue medicine instead, and you could put forward a convincing argument for that in your personal statement, then perhaps it would work. I don't know of any official prohibitions on nursing graduates going for graduate entry medicine. So I think in theory you could, but you'd have to have a good reason for it, because it seems an unusual trajectory to go for the one than the other. And they said, well, you abandoned nursing. Who's to say I'm not now going to abandon medicine? Why are you doing this? But if you have a good reason for it, and a good background story, then it might work. Chagan?
Yes. Now this is something again, Robert, you might have to answer.
Yes.
What are the GCSE requirements?
Commensurately high with the A-level requirements. You want, eights. You want, or if it's IGCSEs, you want A stars. You want good grades across the board, A's and A stars, and certainly a strong performance in chemistry and biology is key, and also in English, because communication is very important for a doctor, written and verbal. So a low grade in English language would be a red flag, and certainly if you're getting low scores in biology and chemistry, then it's going to make them wonder whether you can cope with the scientific side of medicine. But in general, the GCSE scores you want are going to be those which are in line with the A-level requirements I mentioned of A star AA. What sort of GCSE grades would be had by someone who is getting A star A level? You want high grades and a strong showing in the sciences and English language.
Thank you, Robert. The next question is for David. I am a support worker for almost 10 years and I am trying to apply for medicine. Do you think I'm eligible to apply?
Absolutely. If you have the grades and if you can demonstrate commitment, then certainly. Really, the most difficult part is getting an interview. Once you've got that interview, then that's your opportunity to show your skills. And I have absolutely no doubt, being a healthcare worker for 10 years, you have many skills that would be very appropriate for medicine. So yeah, absolutely, definitely. Do apply.
Okay. We have the last two questions. Okay. Just give me 1 second. I'm interested in medicine degree and engineering degree as well. Can I specialize in medicine and then do a engineering degree? I think this is something maybe Robert you can take.
Well, I was going to say, if you're going to read medicine with the view to becoming a doctor, unless you're going in for some sort of medical engineering specialization, I'm not sure. It depends what you mean by engineering. Be more. What do you mean exactly?
So we have a big medical engineering department here, so active clinicians who also do research and development for new techniques. So you've seen the robotic colonoscopy that we're developing. That's a medical engineer that's doing that. So you can, specialize in engineering. So going down more the clinical academic route, where you will practice for, say half of the week, and then you can do your active research for the rest of the time. Yeah, very common. The clinical academics have not been supported particularly well in the UK, and the numbers have dwindled, and a lot of people are now at the point of retiring. But there's a big push to rejuvenate that, so it's a good time to go into it, particularly around the engineering of AI, etc. Then it's you can have a really nice career in that area. So yeah, engineering and medicine go together very well.
Okay, thank you, David. We have one last question. So the student has said, I'm a recent MD graduate. However, the GMC is currently not accepting my degree to work in the UK, although it's accepted in USA, Australia, and other destinations. Are there any particular routes for somebody like myself to study medicine again and work for the NHS?
So I think, to be perfectly honest, I think you would struggle to get into medical school if you've already got an MD, taken as the medical doctor degree as opposed to the research degree. If the I don't know the details of this. I'm slightly surprised if the USA and Australia do recognise the MD that the UK doesn't. However, the GMC or the GMC, they look for equivalence. So I can't really comment, but I do think probably studying medicine in the UK, if you've already got an MD, I think people would want to know why, at least. So give it a try. I mean, I'm not trying to put you off at all, but just yeah. And yeah, try to speak. I mean, again, the GMC are not, they're very helpful people. If they gave you a reason why they're not accepting it, if not, try to speak to people about it, to understand why. Because I'm slightly surprised about that, but obviously the GMC are independent.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, students,
you.
for joining. I think we are at the end of the session. We will be sending you the presentation and the link for YouTube, so please feel free to refer to that.
I was just there's somebody got a question just at the end. I can answer that one very quickly.
Okay.
We look at people based on fee status. So we have quotas from the government. So we have a certain number of people who are Scottish, certain number of people from the rest of the UK, and certain number who are international. We look at the people individually. We assess them individually, because we have to treat them differently. But there are no difference in the selection. So at Dundee, once you're selected for interview, it's all about the interview and everybody is treated equally. It's just about how we actually process the applications that we look at people in groups. So, but yeah, there's no preference over, people are not treated differently in the process. Okay. Hope you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you so much, David, for answering the question. I hope all students have got their answers. And thank you for joining. Take care.